Hi children, if you know any of your father's cousins or your own cousins who are staying somewhere very far away from your hometown, for example a Punjabi family living somewhere in the south of India, or a South Indian family living somewhere in Kashmir or Bombay, for example. I have friends who live in Bombay who are South Indians, and the family adopts an entire environment of the place they live in. For example, my friends who live in Bombay, they speak Hindi at home. I know a close friend of mine who I never knew was a Rajasthani, and she was living in Bombay, and the whole family was speaking Marathi all the time. And I never knew that they were not Marathis. They celebrated the festivals, they followed the rituals and all, because they were the second generation people living in that particular place. And you would have also seen that people who are living in one particular place, we imbibe a whole lot of things from our surroundings. We sort of modulate our body towards environment which we are living in. We sort of take up a lot of culture the place we're living in. For example, a lot of people tell me they love their children insist that they should have idli and sambar for breakfast. People who are from far north, they sort of absorb the culture into their lives. And unless you make a very conscious effort of not gelling in, we very automatically get into the kind of life we see around us, right? If you're living in a jungle, we will see more of how the jungle functions, how plants and animals grow, and how they co-live together, unlike if you're living in some kind of a apartment where we're completely away from the nature. Right? And so wherever we are living in, we are very unconsciously imbibing or soaking in whatever is there around us, right? Now, having said this, when we attune ourselves to watching some kind of series, for example, or reading some kind of books, or some specific kind of books, or even playing some specific kind of games over a period of time for years together, and probably for extensive period of times within a day, we are very unconsciously imbibing the culture, the body language, the actions of the characters that we relate with in those series or whatever games or whatever we're playing with. Okay, now sometimes parents tell me that ma'am, my child is not at all like how we are so different, the child is growing up to be so different. And when you look at it a little more deeply, the child would be spending a whole lot of time watching some kind of either series or interact with some kind of people which is so far away from the way the parents are, right children? So yes, now this stands true that very indirectly, with our extended exposure time to something which we constantly watch and appreciate, we are constantly learning the kind of language or the kind of slang or the kind of accent we are getting into ourselves. Now, while it may be good or bad, whatever, that we are able to imbibe what is there in our surroundings, we can also control what is there in our surroundings, right? How do you do that? Now suppose let's say we're aspiring to be a basketball player. Now just by watching the basketball game is not going to give us much, but when you look into people who are playing that game and what kind of training that person goes through in order to get to that level of playing the game, or what kind of how is he spending his time besides when he's practicing for the game, in very very unknowingly we are sort of imbibing, we are sort of accepting that this is how life should be and this is how I want the life to be. Or for example, you can surround yourself with people who write beautifully, for example lovely authors, by reading their biographies or even autobiographies, or so we can actually control the kind of environment we want around us and not unknowingly get into some kind of a attitude in life which we may even not be realizing we are imbibing. And therefore children, we can actually control the environment and decide who we want to have as our role models, right? And when we have people who have lived their lives in a beautiful way and they have lot to give in a very realistic way, which people can really follow and accept and tread their path, it takes us to a space which is filled with wisdom and empathy for others and empathy for nature, for example, and all the qualities that would make life worth living, right? So you can actually choose environment, and therefore choose carefully who's your role model, what's the environment you want to live in. Even in by living in one particular place, for example, we see that we say auto driver's daughter has become an IAS officer. How does she do that? Because she would have had those kind of books, reading constant, yeah, she would have read those kind of books, she would have listened to, she or he, whoever it is, would have listened to what the teachers had to say, and therefore moved herself from the environment of what her parents did to an environment which would take her towards more, giving her more freedom and giving her more, not only financial freedom, but also the kind of life that person would have wanted to live. So you can actually control the environment. Okay, so try it, give it a thought, and see what is it that you want to live as. Do you want to unknowingly get into the kind of environment which series and all of, we know it's fake, because those are imaginations and stories created by people to keep the interest on, fine, for some time, but extended period of time, when you expose ourselves to something, that's what we have to be careful about, right? So take care and see what is the environment that we are allowing ourselves to live in. Yeah, so bye, ciao.